All right, thank you so much for watching Beginning, one of the many BAKKHAI variations. I would normally say something like, I hope you enjoy the show, but I know for certain that you did. My name is Zach Apony. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the production dramaturg for all the BAKKHAI variations, including this one.
I'm Jessica Bedford, she, her, and I'm the playwright.
And I am James Ijames. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am the director of this play.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me. I'm just going to ask you a few questions to broaden the audience's context, to give them a little treat for hanging out after the show. So the first question is about kind of the commissioning process, Jessica, and how you were asked to write something inspired by BAKKHAI, this Euripides, very, very ancient tragedy, but also specifically Anne Carson's interpretation of it. So was there anything about either of those things, either the original story or Anne Carson's specific version, that inspired you to write what you ended up writing?
Yeah, I've always been really sort of chafed by this play, but I think like in a good way, in the way that like irritation sometimes makes the pearl. Because what's really bothered me about it is that it is a play that is about women losing control and just how dangerous that is viewed within a patriarchal society. And yet, even though that's sort of like one of the core factors of the play, it centers so much on male characters. And so, yeah, that was a real driving force for me. And specifically about the Anne Carson adaptation, she's got this like kind of epic prologue to it. And she's a poet, right? So she doesn't just like go in there and get direct with it. She gives you the image and she says like, put that image in your hot water and see what kind of tea this turns into in your brain. I remember one of them was specifically like, I wish I was a dog so that I could play with myself. And I was like, what does that even mean? But she talks a lot about the beginning of things in that prologue, and so that was a huge source. So creating a version of this story that pulled the women more to the center, and also using those sort of little brain nuggets that Anne Carson gave in the prologue, those were big influences for me.
Yeah, big time. You are by far not the first person or the last person to reference that introduction. So if you at home don't have a copy of Anne Carson's version, I recommend picking it up and giving that a read, because it's brilliant. Yeah, that's great. I also love that tea metaphor. I think I'm gonna stick that hot water tea metaphor, steal that, put it in my lexicon. So the other part of the commissioning process is that you were told that this would almost certainly be produced, on Zoom or like a digital platform. So, you're primarily a playwright. How did you find yourself changing anything about your process or how you think about it when you knew it'd be produced in this way, or knew it could be produced in this way?
Yeah, I think that when you're writing a play, there's a balance between listening to it and seeing it. Yeah, so that you're making sure that you're hearing the dialogue and that you're also seeing the action. I sort of leaned more heavily into listening to it than really worrying about seeing it. And I actually kind of like pulled the rhythm of phone calls into it, which I mean, I know Zoom is more of a video call, but I was sort of using that as my base. Like, what is the rhythm of a phone call when family members are talking to each other, when really good friends are talking to each other. So I listened to it a lot more and worried a little bit less about what I saw, and trusted that brilliant people like director James Ijames would make it look good.
Yeah, absolutely. James, do you have any thoughts about directing a play like this for Zoom? I feel like you had a lot of fun with the visual landscape of it.
Yeah, it's another set of tools that you have at your disposal as a director. You can be really, really tight in terms of the world building. So what's been really great about working on this play is everyone's home is a little world in and of itself. So we get to like sort of curate what each of those spaces look like. You know, we haven't replaced much in any of those spaces. So that's been really exciting to see the scale of the performance still be epic, still feel Greek, but in these like tiny boxes. I've really enjoyed that. And also just like directing home is like kind of all right. I'm not upset about it.
I'm glad. And to rewind a bit to when you first read Jessica's words on the page, what got you really excited to direct it, not even knowing what you would have, you know, what space you have, like what about Jessica's words really got you excited?
So I'm a big fan of Jessica Bedford from way, way, way back. Fun fact, when I met Jessica early on, I think I had met you before we did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
Yeah,
but
I came to Threshing Floor.
yes, yes, yes. But Jessica showed me how to format my script in Word because I couldn't afford Final Draft. And that has always stayed with me. So we feel very kindred in that way. I'm a great admirer of her as a playwright, as an actor, as a human being. But then I read the play and I was like, oh, I really like these women. I'm intimidated by trying to bring them to life, but I think I have maybe a few things I want to say with them. And that was exciting. I felt like they were characters that I lead actors towards. And I felt like, at least after the second or third read of it, I was like, okay, I have a sense of like how this could work and how this could be fun. And I don't know, I keep hoping that I'm doing justice to it.
I feel pretty certain that you are. To return to these women, Jessica, I was so drawn by bringing all of them to life, but the one that, you know, thinking about BAKKHAI in general, the one I was the most drawn to is Semele. Like, she almost feels in many ways like the archetype of like a fridged woman, where her main defining characteristics are her relationship with Zeus and the fact that that she died so that Zeus could you know, give birth to Dionysus out of his knee, which is a wild story, but doesn't give Semele a lot of characterization. So I'm curious, how did you go about creating or extracting character for Semele when we're given so little to characterize her?
Well, for one thing, there's a lot of different versions of the story about like how she, as the Brits would say, fell pregnant. Not so many, you know, like once like she is pregnant, but kind of all of it, they sort of like meet up in the middle, and like, you know, he's got a jealous wife and then lightning and blah blah blah, right? That all sort of lines up the same. But like I was sort of really drawn to like, who is like one woman that could encapsulate all of these possibilities. And I also just was kind of like really curious about like, who's the kind of chicken who's like, I'll have a fling with a god. Okay. Yeah, that's my life. Sure. You're here. Let's do this. You know, I was like, who is that? I want to meet that person.
That's great. And I'm glad we got to meet her a little bit. I feel like Laura Marjoram, who played her, really did a fabulous job bringing her life as well, using your words.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, probably not everyone is watching who knows this, but you are, Jessica, a recent mother yourself, just had a child, which is very exciting.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's brought you a lot of joy. And I'm curious, thinking about, you know, how their pregnancy, these two sisters' pregnancy is positioned, and just like the general societal context of how cis women are commodified for their ability to reproduce. Has it made those feelings more complicated? And if so, how so?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, just had a baby. My baby was 2 weeks old when we were doing casting sessions, right? Like, it was pretty wild.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, he's screaming, everybody, but I'm here. Um, yeah, that's a complicated question that I have like complicated feelings about. It is one of those things where it's like, it's a tremendous like privilege and kind of an amazing thing that like cisgendered women can do with their bodies, you know, although not all cisgendered women can do it with their bodies. It is also one of those things that as you, the word you use is commodified, like that's a really, that's a very accurate word, a very apt word, because it somehow gives you value in a way that is like, oh, really nice, and oh, really yucky, and really kind of awful, and like, and oh, and if you like, even to this day, have a boy, if you have a boy, that makes you more special somehow. James was actually pointing out in one of our early rehearsals about how, like, when Meghan Markle had a boy, you know, that like everybody was like, she had a boy, and that kid's not even going to be king. And like but there's something about a woman who can produce a boy too that makes you even more valuable. And so it's sort of this like yucky thing, an amazing thing, like all smashed into one. And yeah, and I have to admit that I was, 8 months pregnant when I started writing this. And then, as I was just saying, he was just born as we went into rehearsals for this. So it's, if I'm being honest, it wasn't as much that I like chose to write about it, in so much as like it's such a pregnancy and expecting a child and having a male child are so present in the play. And then I happened to be experiencing it that I was like, I don't have a choice. I have to write about this. This is the thing. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know that I really answered your question, because it's a little too messy of a thing to unpack into a soundbite for me. I'm sure there's somebody else who could do it eloquently.
I don't know. I didn't really ask for this specific answer in mind. I just think that your the beginning like poses so many of those questions, and I feel like there's benefit hearing it right from you and where your thoughts sit about that. And I guess to kind of broaden out, my last question is what do you hope audiences will get from seeing this thing? And that could be to either of you.
Okay, I'll go first. I hope it inspires people to hop on the phone or the Zoom or the text message to siblings, to the aunties, to the mamas, like the folks in your life that carry wisdom. And in my life, that those are always the women in my life have the wisdom in my family. I'm not afraid to say that because the men can be nincompoop sometimes. So I'm often looking in their direction. And I always say I was born into a family of women, and so being front row to that kind of relationship, those kinds of relationships, has a real effect on you. So I hope that it inspires people to reach out to their family of whatever gender. Just tell them something surprising about yourself that they don't know. Like, push that relationship in a new direction. I want plays that like make people act as opposed to think too much. I do want them to think, but I do want them to like go and do something too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Jessica?
No, that's it. That's the answer.
Got it in one, James. All right. Well, thank you both so much for hanging out with me and hearing my questions. And thank you, audiences at home, for sticking around and listen to us talk. I hope you learned a couple things. And I hope to see you at the end of another one of these BAKKHAI variations. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.